Zimbabwe awards platinum concession to firm linked to Nigerian billionaire. And Congo Republic's IMF bailout at risk over debt deals. Plus, Tanzania's China-backed $10 billion port plan stalls over terms. Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us on Business Incorporated. I'm Chimezi Obi Iwago. First, the markets. And the bullish sentiment seen at the Nigerian stock market since MTN listed was reversed at intraday as the market was trading in the negative territory, down 0.09%. In South Africa, the JSE index was also down 1.24%. However, Egypt was up 0.11% at intraday. Kenya closed negative on Wednesday. And in the Gulf region, major markets were mixed at intraday. The Abu Dhabi index rose 0.54% with First Abu Dhabi Bank, the country's largest lender, adding 1.2%, while the Dubai index was up 0.21%. Meanwhile, Saudi index was down 1.46%, while Qatar's index was down 0.28% at intraday. And in Europe, markets traded in the red in the morning amid ongoing U.S.-China trade concerns and political uncertainty across the EU. Banking stocks were also down, with Deutsche Bank falling 3%. Shareholders have gathered today for its annual meeting with questions over the bank's strategy and leadership. Well, my colleague in Frankfurt, Lars Holter, was at that meeting, and he joins us now to tell us more about what transpired. Good afternoon, Lars. It was a long day, I guess, for you.
Yes, it certainly was. Yes, it was an interesting day, though.
Sure. Well, Deutsche Bank now has been, that bank has been in many scandals over the past few years. The share price is down. What was the mood at the annual meeting? You were there.
Well, as you can imagine, there was a lot of frustration, there was anger, and most of that was directed at Paul Achleitner, who is the chairman of the supervisory board of Deutsche Bank. And he has basically been in charge of Deutsche Bank over the last 7 years. And through that time, under his reign, really, shares lost about 70%. Over 12 years, by the way, Deutsche Bank shares are down about 95%. And somebody pointed out today, actually, that with the recent losses this week, and especially today, shares for Deutsche Bank are actually worth less than a pack of cigarettes. That's where we stand at this point. So people demand a change, and a lot of people there demanded for Paul Achleitner to step down. There were several motions on the table. One was, first of all, to dismiss him as chair of the meeting, and the other very important proposal was to deny the approval of his actions during the last business year. Both of these proposals got a lot of applause in the room. However, who was in that room? Really about a couple of thousand people, but they were all the individual stockholders. And together, they are still not powerful enough. No change really is expected today at all, because both Achleitner as well as his CEO, Christian Sewing, still have the backing by institutional investors.
Hey, Christian Sewing has been the CEO of that bank for a year now. So do investors think that he can turn things around?
Well, there is really not a lot of confidence anymore in the bank, in Achleitner, and yes, in Christian Sewing too. A lot of people have pointed out today, when I spoke to them, that yes, he might be doing his job slightly better than his predecessors. And after all, he did get Deutsche Bank back into the green. They made a profit last year, albeit only about $340 million euros, which is not a lot of money for a bank. Now, still, he is under a lot of attack, and there was a couple of things today that stuck out to me. One shareholder actually quoted Christian Sewing's speech from last year, when Sewing said that after years and years of scandals, he would promise shareholders that times would be getting a lot more boring under his reign. And then what happened? Deutsche Bank failed yet another stress test in the United States. There was several downgrades by Moody's and other credit agencies. agencies. There was also a major raid on offices here in Frankfurt that were connected to money laundering and the so-called Russian laundromat. So there was just more and more scandals, and that particular shareholder, he said, if these are boring times, then I don't want to stick around for when it gets interesting.
Well, I guess only time will tell of what becomes of that bank in the near future. Anyway, another company in trouble is Boeing after 2 deadly crashes. Now, the company is trying to get its business back in order. Is it working?
It's not really working as quickly as Boeing promised up until the last couple of days, because Boeing said specifically with regards to the 737 MAX 8, which of course is the plane that crashed twice in the last couple of months, they were reworking the software and specifically the plane's stabilizer system. And they just announced last week that the update was ready for the FAA in the United States to be approved. And once that would be approved, of course, that means the fleet of 737 MAX 8 planes that is currently grounded globally around the world, none of these planes are flying, they would be allowed to take off again. But what we are hearing right now from the FAA is, as a matter of fact, they have not received any updates at all from Boeing a week after Boeing had announced just that. So there seems to be major problems. We don't know right now where the delay stems from, but Boeing apparently is not quite done with the updates, and that means the fleet is staying grounded just a little longer, and of course that costs the company billions of dollars, as well as obviously the airlines who desperately need the planes.
Well, Lars, I guess it's time for you to go and take a rest after that long time out at Deutsche annual meeting. Enjoy the rest of the day. Meanwhile, in the UK, politics are a central focus as voting in the EU elections begin in there and, of course, the Netherlands. In the meantime, Brexit uncertainty continues to weigh on the market. Well, my colleague at our London studio, Simon Pusey, will tell us more on the London markets. Hello, Simon. Good afternoon. Well, European election and Brexit are hot topics there now, with pressure mounting on British Prime Minister Theresa May to resign. The sterling slumped in the morning. What's the update from the currency and the equities market? And what is the talk about? What are they talking about in terms of the EU election in the face of Brexit?
Good afternoon. Yes, thank you. So this is a story that's moving all the time. Voting has started in the EU elections. The ruling Conservative Party here, polls suggest they won't do well at all. In the last few hours, it's been announced that Theresa May's Brexit withdrawal bill will not be published or debated until early June. The Prime Minister had hoped to publish it tomorrow, then vote on it next week. But absolutely no one likes it, the new version, so that's all been scrapped. Due to all of this mess, the Prime Minister is also facing increasing pressure from her own MPs to resign. So we'll be watching that and bringing you updates all the time. So how is all of that affecting the equity markets? Well, not well at all, as you might expect. All the FTSE indices are down today. The all share is down 1.37%. The FTSE 100 is down 1.41%. And the FTSE 250 is down 1.38% at 19,040. Not great news either for the pound. It's on a record losing streak. It's lost more than 3% of its value this month alone, and it continues to slide down against the dollar at 1.26, up slightly against the euro. That's the first time in 14 days, by the way, that the pound has been higher than the euro, and finally down once again on the yen at 139.19.
And so, what companies are making headlines today?
Yeah, so we've got 4 pharmaceutical firms which have been accused of illegally colluding to restrict the supply of an anti-nausea tablet, driving the price paid for it by the NHS up by 700%. The Competition and Markets Authority, CMA, said the cost of one of the drugs rose from £6.49 per pack to £51.68 after suppliers agreed not to compete. The drug is often prescribed to cancer patients undergoing chemotherapy, so we'll see how that investigation pans out. Yesterday, we also brought you the news about British Steel going into administration with 5,000 jobs in the balance. Well, today, the Financial Times newspaper is reporting that the Business Secretary, Greg Clark, has come up with a rescue plan for British Steel. Under the plan, it says the UK government would act as a cornerstone investor alongside a consortium of private companies. We'll keep you across all of the updates on that too.
Okay, Japan's Panasonic says it was halting business with Huawei to comply with U.S. restrictions. Now, this Huawei's trouble is certainly having a ripple effect on the tech industry. How is the shares of the tech companies faring today at the market?
Yeah, so the Huawei story continues to rumble on. Japan's Panasonic, as you just said, is halting business with Huawei to comply with US restrictions. Huawei's trouble certainly having an effect on the industry. Yeah, let me tell you about it, because essentially anything that affects the China and US relations really does impact on the markets here. So we've seen a big slide in the FTSE over the last few days. Japan's Panasonic says it's stopping business with Huawei. It says the ban applies to goods having 25% or more of US originated materials. However, there was some confusion about Panasonic's position when later in the day its Chinese website said the firm would continue to supply Huawei. Here, the markets basically always react badly to increasing tensions between China and America, and the news that another firm are banning Huawei may be part of the reason that all three FTSE indices are down today, as I mentioned earlier. Fears growing that a trade war could intensify as other firms follow America's lead in banning Huawei.
All right, thank you, Simon. Let's continue to keep a tab on those developments, particularly the election ongoing at the moment. Enjoy the rest of the day. In Asia, markets declined today as investors worried about the ongoing trade tensions between the United States and China. Mainland Chinese shares slipped on the day as the Shanghai Composite declined 1.36% and the Shenzhen Composite also dropped 2.432%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index declined 1.73% as of its final hour of trading. Elsewhere, the Nikkei 225 in Japan slipped 0.62%. In South Korea, the Kospi fell 0.26% to close at 2,059.59, while Australia's ASX 200 declined 0.29% to finish its trading day at 6,491.8. And in the U.S., stock index futures were sharply lower in the morning as market participants continue to monitor an intensifying trade war between the world's two largest economies. At around 6 a.m. Eastern Time, Dow futures indicated a negative open of more than 250 points. Futures on the S&P and Nasdaq were both also seen lower. The U.S. and China have imposed tariffs on billions of dollars worth of one another's goods since the start of 2018, battering financial markets and soaring business and consumer sentiment. Meanwhile, investors are likely to monitor a flurry of economic data reports. The latest weekly jobless claims data are set to be published at around 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, followed by a flash reading of manufacturing and services PMI figures for May. New home sales for April and Kansas City Fed survey data for May are both scheduled for release later in the session. In corporate news, Medtronic, Royal Bank of Canada and Best Buy are among some of the companies set to report their latest quarterly results before the bell. And away from the equities, advisors to Congo Republic's government have warned it that there is a major risk the International Monetary Fund will reject its bid for a long-sought bailout. Negotiations for an IMF program have dragged on since 2017, with the IMF's executive board demanding the Central African oil producer ensure the sustainability of its debt, most of which is owned to China and oil traders. At the end of its most recent mission to Congo this month, an IMF team said it was finally ready to support a 3-year credit facility, but any program would first need to be approved by the fund's board. And a planned $10 billion port project in Tanzania backed by China has hit an impasse with the two sides disagreeing on terms of infrastructure investment. In 2013, Tanzania signed a framework agreement with China Merchant Holdings International, China's largest port operator, to build the port and a special economic zone that aims to transform the East African country into a regional trade and transport hub. The Tanzanian government has officially written to the Chinese port operator on the disputed terms. When they are ready, they will resume the negotiation. When we return after the break, we'll look at the commodity space, talking about gold. And of course, we will look at the update from the Nigerian equities market. To stay with us. Thank you for staying tuned here. We're talking commodities here, and we're looking at the metals market, precisely gold. Prices of gold were steady today as simmering Sino-US trade tensions underpinned the dollar, while bullion investors looked for a direction after the minutes of the US Federal Reserve meeting indicated that there was no hurry in cutting rates. Our spot gold was steady at $1,273.37 per ounce in early trade after falling to $1,268.97 on Tuesday, its lowest level since May 3. U.S. gold futures edged down 0.1% to $1,272. Among other precious metals, silver fell 0.4%, while platinum edged 0.2% lower. Platinum was steady at $799 an ounce after touching its lowest level since February 15. Obviously, in times of global economic uncertainty, investors always fly to the safe haven commodity, which is gold. That is why there is an inverse relationship between the price of gold and the value of dollar. Now, let's bring in one of the research analysts with financial derivatives company, Aisha Bello, to put all of these together for us. Good afternoon, Aisha. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good afternoon.
Now, we have seen the price of gold fall by 6% in 2019 so far. That's to about $1,274 per ounce. What is the outlook for the commodity, especially in the light of the current U.S.-China trade war?
A change in the price of gold is often a reflection of a change in the value of the US dollar. When dollar strengthens, gold becomes expensive and the demand reduces. As a result of this, there's a decline. There's always a decline in the price of gold. Also, during trade wars, we noticed that the domestic currency of participant countries is usually very highly volatile. US-China trade war has escalated, and as a result of this, there's been an increase in the demand for gold from investors, as gold as a store of value. So we expect the price of gold to increase in the near term.
Now, let's bring it back home now. In Zamfara State, there has been increased disturbances and massive killings, forcing the federal government to ban mining activities in the state. What do you think will be the impact of this on the prospects for commercial production of gold in the country, and of course Zamfara State in particular?
Zamfara State is one of the states with the highest deposit of gold in Nigeria. It accounts for about 30% of the country's total. The ban on the mining activities in the state is going to, result in, one, an increase in unemployment rate. Zamfara State had the 8th lowest unemployment rate in Q3 2018. Also, it's going to lead to a decline in the state's internally generated revenue. In addition to this, there is going to have the ban is going to have a negative impact on the country's prospects for commercial production of gold.
Now, Nigeria produces approximately 7,000 kilograms of gold annually, with high deposits in states such as Zamfara, like you mentioned. Of course, we have Kogi, we have Kaduna. Now, after peace is restored to Zamfara State, do you think Nigeria will be able to compete with its peers, such as Ghana, that produces about 128.50 kilograms annually.
In 2018, the federal government signed a memorandum of understanding with China on the exploration of solid mineral resources, including gold. You know, after peace is restored to Zamfara State, we expect that the first thing to be done is to lift the ban on the mining activities, and this, coupled with the memorandum of understanding that has been signed with China, with increased adequate infrastructure, improved ease of doing business, the level of production will increase. So although Ghana is known as the Gold Coast of Africa, however, Nigeria, there is the possibility that Nigeria will be able to compete with Ghana in the near term, in the long run.
All right, thank you for your time, Aisha.
Thank you.
Well, let's do a quick crossover now to the Nigerian Stock Exchange for an update from Temple. Hello, Temple. Good afternoon. Well, it seems the noise about MTN seems to be dousing at the moment. Can you give us an update on what's happening there now with the index?
Well, it's expected, again, because lots of traders on the floor of the exchange and those who trade remotely have now been able to participate in the transactions on MTN shares. That's why we can see a bit of a sense of profit taking and then some kind of what you call exit, basically, from MTN shares at this point in time. That's why the point in time it was going down, the share price was going down, but as we speak, it's still up, rising beyond some 5% in the market. We've seen some 26 to 27 million units of trade transactions exchanged on that particular company right now, Chimize.
Now, at intraday, we saw the banking sector up as much as 1.15%. That's just about 12 noon. What's driving that sector at the moment? What's the index at the moment, and what are the factors driving it?
So it was the fact that yesterday, if you look at the transactions record yesterday, that segment of the market was really down. Almost all the companies that you have under the banking sector actually traded low yesterday. So it tells you that the prices were cheap enough for some investors to come in. However, there are a couple of investors that are traders there on the floor that still had holdings in those banking names. So when there was a bit of re-entry on that segment this morning, perhaps given the sense of appreciation from MTN shares, you want to quickly reinvest some profit in the banking side of things. Some investors, enjoy that. But at the end of the day, if you look at what the numbers are saying right now on the portal of the exchange, we have the banking indices dipping down by more than 1% right now. So it tells you that there's been a profit taken on that segment of the market as well, Chimeze.
Okay, Temple, let's wait till 2:30 and see what happens eventually. Well, Zimbabwe has awarded a concession to explore for and mine platinum to a company linked to a Nigerian billionaire as the country speeds up investment in the mining sector it hopes will transform the country's struggling economy. The concession comes just over a year after President Emerson Mnangagwa's government signed an agreement with Cyprus-based Caro Resources to develop a $4.2 billion integrated platinum mine. Zimbabwe is seeking to quickly exploit its reserves of platinum, which is used in catalytic converters for limiting emissions of autonomous vehicle manufacturers and moving to electric cars powered by lithium batteries. The Information Ministry said Bavura Holdings, in which Nigerian billionaire Benedict Peters is a major shareholder, would on Thursday, that's today, sign an agreement to mine platinum on Zimbabwe's mineral-rich Greek dike. And that's it on the program. Thank you for watching. I'm Chimizi Obi Iwago.